I remember the moment of the greatest joy of my entire life. There was this moment that it was small, it didn't seem important, but it was a moment that I've always wished I could recreate because somehow, some way I felt God, and I knew God, and I was just filled with joy. It was ephemeral, it was fleeting, it was indescribable. I've experienced the stuff that's supposed to give you joy. I've seen the birth of my children. I've been on a helicopter over the Grand Canyon. I've experienced stuff, but in this moment, it was something special. And I was on a train in Thailand. I had been backpacking in Thailand. I was quite a bit younger then. And when I boarded, it's funny, when I boarded the train, I had been in this little village near the Mekong River working with a discipleship team there that was teaching English to locals and canvassing the area and building bridges with people. And when I left, I wasn't part of the group. I had just kind of tagged along. And when I left, the villagers came together and surrounded me and prayed for me. And then they all tied string around my wrist. Like each person stopped and like put their hand on my shoulder and prayed a real quick blessing and then tied a string around my wrist. And I had strings from here to here. Like I got a really good tan in Thailand, except this spot that was white as white could be because it was just covered in these strings. And I boarded this train, and I remember I was in a sleeping car with a German couple and a French guy. And I thought, who was it that stinks so bad? Like somebody was smelling funky. And like 20 minutes into it, I realized the funky person was me. Like I was smelling nasty. But I remember sitting and watching the Thai countryside go by, and I pulled out my Discman. So just so you have an idea of how long ago this was, these mini disc players lasted about a week. They were popular for about that amount of time, and I used to record concerts with them. And I had this mini disc with me of a band called Dig Jesus, and Dig Jesus was a jam band Christian band in the '90s. And I put in this song called Dancing in Concert with the Infinite, and I was listening to it. And there's one line in it where he says, once again, the Spirit is moving out over the water. And if you read the first passage of Genesis, it says, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. It says the earth was formless and void, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the waters, and God said, let there be light. And so there's this image in this song that says God is doing this again, that God is creating something new, starting something new, that this creation thing isn't over, that he's creating something spectacular right here, right now. And then the song continues, and he says, I will raise my hands to the sky and fall. And then he has this primal scream and yells out, you will catch me, and starts screaming in a way that I can't even try to duplicate it. I would sound ridiculous, and I'd go hoarse, and you wouldn't hear the rest of the sermon. But I'm leaning against the window in this train, and I just start weeping. And there's just something that happens where I just know God is there. Despite my stink, despite the fact that I haven't showered in days, I've been washing my clothes in buckets and eating peanut butter. I eat peanut butter for 4 days in a row. But there was just something that happened where I was just filled with thankfulness. I was just filled with the idea that God is good and wonderful. And, watching the water buffalo fly by and the Thai plants that look totally different than what I'm used to at home. It was just this moment that I've never been able to recapture. I wish I could. I wish I could bottle it and drink it up every day, but it just wasn't there. But the point today is that God is that God that I experienced that day. That in this life we get a little taste of that God here and there, but it's ephemeral, it's passing, it's fleeting. You're not going to experience it every single day. But because we know he's that kind of God, and that's what we're going to talk about, we worship. We're going to talk about worship today. Our pillars are service, study, worship, rest. We took down the sign today, and there's reasons behind that we won't discuss. But service, study, worship, rest, and today we're on the worship pillar. And some sermons just kind of write themselves. When I sit down, and some are just a grind. It's just reading and studying, and this one was just like bleh, just out on the screen and on the page easily. And I started with the song "Wonderful World." It was Louis Armstrong, right? And recreated in the version that you just heard, along with "Somewhere Over the Rainbow" by an artist named Iz. And Iz is a really huge Hawaiian dude playing a mandolin. The mandolin's like this big compared to him. He's ding, 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 ding. But the song, What a Wonderful World, you listen to it, and it sounds like worship to me from a perspective of it's the old C-3PO quote, praise the maker, right? You hear about all this great stuff, and for me, my heart turns towards God as the maker of heaven and earth. God is the maker of the trees that are green, the skies that are blue, the red roses too. I see. And all of this stuff you can look at and just be overwhelmed. Trees alone, if you just stop and think about the fact that we breathe in oxygen, we breathe out carbon dioxide, and those trees suck up that carbon dioxide and say, here's enough oxygen for the next day. And that happens all over the planet, all day, every single day, for me and you. The line, I see them here for me and you, is so true. That's what the trees are here for. And roses, I think about the thorns, and I wonder what God was protecting them from. But roses are just a thing of beauty. But we're going to talk about what a wonderful world. But I also want to add a question mark at the end. And we'll get into that later. So I believe it is a wonderful world, but some people don't experience it as a wonderful world. And I don't want to gloss over that, but I do want to at least touch on it. But the song says, I see skies of blue and clouds of white. And you can look at the skies. And I think a lot about the fact that it was 50 degrees yesterday and 90 degrees last week. And do you know why that was? It's because the earth is moving around the sun at a constant rate, and it's tilted in a certain way. And when that tilt is tilted away or towards the sun in a particular way, the temperature changes for us perfectly so that we experience the seasons, so that we experience the climate as we do, that we can survive. You look at the skies of blue, and there's this big flaming ball of gas out there. You guys are thinking, I'm listening to one right now. This big flaming ball of gas out there, burning so hot that if you didn't have protection, you would be melted. And this covering is over us at all times. That's just the perfect amount of covering. It's the perfect chemistry of covering. So though sunlight reaches us, and I see Mike and Marilyn back here, you guys got a little bit of a tan this week, but you didn't melt on the beach. They took a vacation. They come back, their skin, it was very healthy for them. They got vitamin D. It built them up instead of burning them. And so we look at the skies of blue, and the skies of blue isn't just something pretty. It is aesthetically pretty. We look at it and you can say, well done, God. You can look at it and go, wow, you're amazing. But there's so much depth to why the blue skies are amazing and the clouds of white that pick up the water out of the ocean. If a person's stranded on a boat in the ocean and it starts raining, they celebrate. Why? Because what's happened is all the water from the ocean that they can't drink has gone up into the sky and been filtered on its own and dropped into their lap as pure, clean drinking water. That happens all day, every day, all the way across the globe. We just live in a wonderful world where God is good. He says, the bright, blessed day and the dark, sacred night is how the original song goes. I was reading, and so there are parts of the planet where it's day all day, where it's bright all day, where the sun never goes down. And then there's parts of the planet, or there's 9 months of the year in darkness and 3 months in light, or 9 months in light and 3 months in darkness. And I would hate to, and you probably would hate to live in one of those places. Live in a place where it's always light. It gets away from our circadian rhythm. I think it would drive you insane. We need variety in our lives. And I've been reading that psychiatrists and self-help gurus and such, they talk about the 6 kind of base needs of people. And one is constancy. You need things that are secure in your life, things that are safe in your life. But you also need variety. You need change. We look at the seasons. And there's this movie, or this TV show by Amazon called Forever. And I won't go away the plot. But the idea is that these people are living in a place where it's wonderful, everything's great, everything's fantastic, but it's always the same. And I put it on loop, that wasn't an accident, because it would drive you insane too, right? I mean, you guys, the first time it was on the screen, you're like, well, this is interesting, I'm going to check this out, right? If I leave it up there for 12 cycles, you're going to say, please shut that stupid thing off, shut that music off, right? It's nice music, it's a nice picture, it's nice imagery, but you don't want it over and over, you don't want it the same in your life. And when Louis Armstrong wrote, the brightness of day, the bright, blessed day, and the dark, sacred night, he knew what he was talking about. We need variety in our lives. And this is what we find in the universe, is that not only has God given us this need and this drive for change. See, it's starting to get annoying, isn't it? Right? You're like, please, and nobody's even listening to me. They're just watching the video, so we'll go back to this. You look at the seasons, and all summer long, people are saying, I can't wait for fall to get here. All winter long, I can't wait for spring to get here. Some of you, in the fall, like everything is pumpkin. Like your kids could eat their shoes as long as they tasted like pumpkin spice, and you'd be like all for it. Pumpkin spice is the thing. But then you don't want pumpkin spice in the spring. You want change. And that's what God has gifted us with, is this cycle of change in our lives. Our bodies change. Our thoughts change. The skies are always different. You never, ever step out to see the same sky, ever. It's just God has gifted us with this gift of variety, which is an existential need for us. William Cowper, the famous author, says variety is the very spice of life that gives it all its flavor. We want change, and God has supplied us with a universe that is in constant change. And if you think about it, how bland would it be if everything was white, everything was gray, everything was red? Pick a color. The variety of colors is a reason to say, what a wonderful world. The variety of people is a reason to say, what a wonderful world. God has created art. This whole thing is a work of art that God has handed us, put into our lap. And kind of the mission and the goal of art is to admire the artist, right? When you see the art, you know about the artist. It's a separate sermon for a separate day. The song goes on, I see babies cry. I watch them grow. They'll learn much more than I'll ever know. My son has started carving bows and arrows. And so he goes out and he picks the perfect stick that has the perfect bend in it. And his grandfather taught him to carve little circles around the tips. And then he wants me to come in. And so we have to put the stick between my legs and bend it like this so that he can tie the thing on the end and tie it on the other end. And then he goes out and, he's big time now. He's got a bow and arrow and he goes out and it shoots like 30 feet. And he's like, yeah, it's amazing, right? But it's just watching a 10-year-old and the wonder in his eyes. He's so pumped to create a bow and arrow out of a stick. Watching him walk through life, watching him figure out how to do anything is just, it's the best thing on the planet. And that's what Louis Armstrong was hitting on here, is that we watch children wake up to grow up, and we get to see the wonder of life in them. And a lot of us, we grow out of that. We grow out of the wonder of life. And I don't think God wants it to be that way at all. I think constant fascination is a pretty good place to be that God would have us in. But we're so consumed with so much stuff that really doesn't matter that a lot of times we lose fascination. And so what is the proper response to the artist? If you go to an art show and the art is the most fantastic thing you've ever seen in your life, and then you get the chance to meet the artist, you go, thanks for the show, pal. Or you say, man, this is amazing. You're really good at what you do. Right? And a lot of times with God, we're the former, not the latter. A lot of times with God, in fact, we don't even stop to look at the clouds in the sky. We complain about what we don't have. We complain about what's bugging us. The psalmist tells us the right way to respond. It says, let the heavens rejoice. That's everything. The heavens is everything. Let the earth be glad. The heavens and the earth encompasses everything. It says, everything be happy. Everything rejoice. Everybody be glad. Let the sea resound and all that is in it. Let the fields be jubilant and everything in them. Let all the trees of the forest sing for joy. We were created to worship. The universe was created as a work of art by an artist that deserves our adoration and our attention. It is a wonderful world, but then the question is begged, is it? We don't want to gloss over the fact that there is suffering and pain in the world. And obviously, I've got 20 minutes left here, or 15 minutes left here. We're not going to solve the problems of the world right now, and we're definitely not going to fix the existential issue of suffering in the universe. But let's talk about this artist that has created this wonder, trees that breathe for you and me to exist, and the fact that there are slum kids like we talked about supporting last week. So we give money all the time to different causes, and one of the ones we gave to last week was a school in the slums of India where kids literally eat out of the garbage. Like this kid, if he sees something float by here, and there's no telling where that water comes from, there's no plumbing here, it's probably not even water. Something comes by that he can consume, he's going to consume it. This is the world that some people live in. It is a wonderful world, but we also have to face off with the fact that for some people it doesn't feel very wonderful. And how do we deal with that? And again, I'm not going to try to fix that today. I have a lot of thought. I could talk for hours and hours and hours on this topic. I've thought about it more than most topics that in my entire life. But let's just briefly talk about what Scripture seems to indicate about God's response to suffering. Thomas Merton, the famous Trappist monk, if you've never been down to the Abbey of Gethsemane in Bardstown, you really ought to go. It's a fantastic experience. But he hid out there for a long time and wrote a ton of books, and this is one of the things he had to say. He said, God, who is everywhere, never leaves us, yet he seems sometimes to be present, sometimes to be absent. If we do not know him well, we do not realize that he may be more present to us when he is absent than when he is present. I was really sick last week and had gotten some kind of flu bug. And at some point I had cold chills. I just couldn't get warm. I mean, I had blanket after blanket after blanket. And I woke Kara up in the middle of the night. I said, babe, I can't. I'm literally shaking. And I said, I can't get warm. And being the wonderful woman she is, she cuddled up against me and spooned me and held me. And now she's embarrassed. It's okay that we spoon, babe. We're married. It's all good. Don't hide. She's hiding behind her hand. I don't even know what that does. Our 2-year-old does that. If he's embarrassed, he does like this, and now my wife's doing it in front of you guys. So there's this moment where not everything is okay. Not everything is right, and yet someone saddled up to me to say, I'm here with you and try to make me warm. And the Bible doesn't gloss over the fact that there's a lot of pain out there, but what it seems to say is that during those times of pain, during those times when a person has the cold chills and can't quite get warm, that God is the kind of God that saddles up next to them, slides up next to them, and holds them, and is close to them. In Romans, this passage has gotten me through more situations than I could possibly explain. It says we glory in our sufferings because suffering produces perseverance, and perseverance character, and character hope, and so forth. And it says hope does not disappoint us because the love of God has been poured out. So it says in the middle of suffering, God pours out his love and takes us and changes us and molds us and makes us in that suffering. And you can bet I felt closer to my wife in that moment, in the moment of my uncontrollable shaking, than I did probably 4 hours earlier when we were just eating dinner together. I was in pain and she was there. And so the Bible seems to indicate that in suffering, God comes close. It says the Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit. So the quick response to, is it a wonderful world, is, well, it's a world that hurts, but there's something wonderful in the hurt that can be taken from it because God comes in and gets close to people. And we may ultimately find out that those who suffered the most had the greatest advantage from an eternal kingdom perspective. We may find out that, I think there's going to come this time 18 billion years from now when we look back at this life and say, I don't even remember. I don't remember what I did 20 years from now. What's it going to be like an eternal thing? And so at some point, suffering is going to fade. Suffering is going to disappear. And then no telling what God will have done and will continue to be doing as a result of suffering. And then the Bible also teaches that not only does God come close and that he is there, and like the Bible teaches that God is personally vested in the life of the suffering, that there's something special that he responds to in times of suffering. But then, like the Somewhere Over the Rainbow song that we just read, the lyrics say, somewhere over the rainbow, bluebirds fly. And the dreams that you dreamed of, dreams really do come true. Someday I wish upon a star. And this is the part that's so important. Wake up where the clouds are far behind me, where trouble melts like lemon drops, high above the chimney top. That's where you'll find me. And it fits in and slides in nicely with this passage in the book of Revelation. And Revelation is the end times. It's how this is all going to end. All this suffering, all this pain, all this earth right here, right now, this passage tells us what it's going to look like. And it says, behold, which means looky here, the dwelling place of God is with man. He will dwell with them, and they will be his people, and God himself will be with them as their God. He will wipe away every tear from their eyes, and death shall be no more. Neither shall there be mourning, nor crying, nor pain anymore, for the former things have passed away. If the Christian worldview is true, it means not only are the suffering intimately cared for by God here and now, like walking with them through the pain, and all of us experience that. All of us experience pain, and sometimes all of us experience pretty intense pain at some point. But if the Christian worldview is true, then God is walking with us through that. And also, it's not the end of the story. And that's what's so important when we talk about worship and suffering. If suffering were the end of the story, then probably God is not worthy of worship. or whatever that is out there. But if there's a God who comes in and walks with us through pain, and again, we're not getting into the philosophy behind suffering as to why God would do that and the theodicies of God and that sort of thing today. But if this is true, then that God is still worthy of worship, and we can still ditch the question mark from the end of the sentence, what a wonderful world. We can say it is a wonderful world, despite suffering, despite pain. So there's days of passing joy, like on the train in Thailand, where it's just like God is there, everything's fantastic. And then there's days where you're shaken uncontrollably in bed, and God is still God on every one of those days, and still worthy of our worship. It's really interesting, this passage here where Jesus says, this is what it's going to look like, guys. There's going to be a new heaven and everybody thinks we're going to go to heaven. The Bible seems to describe, actually, there's going to be a new earth and a new heavens. So it's not going to be that far off from where we are now. But it says, Jesus says, I'm going to wipe all the tears from your eyes. I'm going to make everything right. There will be no more suffering, no more pain. And it's pretty neat. Right after that, this is what follows that passage. And it says, and he who was seated on the throne said, behold, I'm making all things new. This is so funny. It says, also, he said, write this down. Yeah. Yeah. He says, this one I want in writing. He says, I want to make sure everybody knows this thing. I'm making everything new. Suffering will be gone. Pain will be gone. Hurting will be gone. There's a God who said, write it down. When you say write it down, man, you mean it. It's basically it's saying, hold me accountable to this. Quote me on this. I will make it right. And that is a God worthy of worship. He's a God we can count on. There's an old band called the Sensational Williams Brothers. And they have a lot of albums. And they have this song where the lyrics say, sleepless nights and so much pain, couldn't see no sunshine, nothing but rain. But God said, weeping may endure for a night, but in the morning, it'd be all right. Oh, what a relief it was when God rescued me. He loosed my chains, and he set me free. It felt like cooling water, just like cooling water from Grandma's well. So there's a God that on those days, like he says, there's no sunshine, nothing but rain. That's not going to endure. So what is, again, our response in bad times and good times? Well, in the good times, it's, as the psalmist says, enter his gates with thanksgiving and his court with praise. It means we say thanks. We don't just say, oh, you're a pretty decent artist. I'm out, man. I'm too cool to thank you, right? Instead, we actually verbalize it. We give thanks. We give praise. We give our lives. Is Christianity meant to be radical? Is it meant to be all-consuming? Is it meant to be what some people would describe as over the top? How big is the praise for the great artist? It's not a question of God wanting to control you like a puppet where he just tugs on the strings and makes you his own because he's manipulating you. Instead, he just wants you to see him. He just wants you to see how fascinating he is, how big he is, how incredible he is. The blue skies that he created for you to be safe from the sun. The trees that he created for you so that you can breathe in and out every single day without even thinking about it. He just wants you to notice. Because if you'll notice, the natural response is wow. The natural response is yes. The natural response is goodness. When you give your life to Jesus, when you worship him, it's not this awful thing where you are forced to be submitted to a tyrant. You're submitting to joy. That's what it is. To follow Jesus is to submit to joy. It's to say, I will take what you got, and what he's got is all good. And then in the bad times it says, so do not fear, for I am with you. Do not be dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you and help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand. In the good times and the bad are times to turn to God. We've been talking about our 4 pillars: service, study, worship, and rest. And today we've arrived at worship. All of our pillars, we've decided that the mission will also be the method. So for our service, we're doing service projects. For study, we're doing study groups. For worship, we have worship services. And for rest, we actually rest. We have nothing. That's kind of the anti-activity is the rest. But when we talk about worship, we talk about something that is active. It's not passive. It's kind of both. But we want to encourage you to worship God and hopefully arrive at something. That when you worship God, it will transform your character. It will change who you are. So when you serve, you find purpose. When you study, you find knowledge. And when you worship, you encounter the topic of surrender. So if you follow this path, the daylight path of service, study, worship, rest, you arrive at purpose, service, knowledge, surrender, and peace. That's the goal. Purpose, knowledge, surrender, and peace. We think those are the marks of a follower of Jesus. And so when you worship and you see this great artist, it's natural that you would want to give yourself to him. It turns into, what do you want from me? How can you make art out of my life? What would it take for you to use me like you use the trees outside? What would it take for you to use me? How can I be yours? It's the natural response to a person who worships. So we believe in giving credit where credit is due. So what does that look like in our lives? Well, technically, when I wrote down this sermon months ago, so I map out all my sermons, you guys know that, and we did this series on service, study, worship, rest. Service was service projects, study was small groups. Worship was supposed to be worship services, and I wanted to encourage you just to be all in when we do our worship services and come to Nightlight services. And so there's my pitch. Show up at church, come to Nightlight. That's not what I want to talk about today. Instead, I want to talk about being that joy for others. And I'm closing up right now. But earlier we read this psalm. It said, the Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit. And when we conform to the image of Jesus, when we worship him and we surrender to him and we submit to him, we start to become like him. We start to think like him. We start to walk the way he walked and do the things that he did. And so he saddles up to the suffering. And so that's part of it. If we're going to be people who worship God, it's going to be being like God and serving others and blessing others, saddling up to people who are hurting. And in Psalms it says also, you will show me the path of life. In your presence is fullness of joy. So I can talk, it's always conflicting as a pastor. Like if I want you guys to show up for church and show up on time and stay and meet people and grow a church, and there's like this inner self-identity thing that I have to deal with, is I want to be the pastor of a thriving church because I'm a guy and I want what I touch to work, and you guys are probably the same as me. When you go to your job, you want it to be successful and so forth. So there's this selfish thing in me about even a sermon like this that I'm aware of that I don't know how to deal with. So when it comes to encouraging you to be in God's presence, I have to on every sermon, and if you've ever taught a Bible study, if you've ever taught a book study, you have to do this. You have to get past yourself. And you have to get past what you want to see people, or see for people for personal reasons. But I think the Jesus-centered reason for a person to worship, the Jesus-centered reason for a person to give credit where credit is due is contained right there. It says, in his presence is fullness of joy. We're looking for joy. It's that song. We're looking for joy in all the wrong places. We're trying to find joy. We're trying to find satisfaction. We're trying to find purpose in places that it just doesn't come from. This tells us where it comes from. This is that moment I experienced in Thailand where God was there, was the greatest moment of joy in my entire life. And that's what this passage describes. It says, in his presence is fullness of joy. And so if anything comes out of this, my goal and my hope would be that you would put yourself in positions to experience the presence of God. And that takes conscious effort. It means from here moving forward that you're going to look for times to be alone with God, to seek him, to find him, to study the scriptures, to pray, to worship, to sing, and so forth, and to do it corporately as well.